Hi everyone, welcome to This Week in Tyranny, the loveliest 45 minutes plus in alternative news media. I'm your host Konrad Rogoz. Welcome to episode 108. Today is December 28th, 2024. It's the last episode of the year. The title of the episode is Women Set on Fire, No One Comes to Help, and the Killer Fans the Flames in Front of a Cop. It's not a very imaginative title, but it kind of just sums it up. Like, that's what we're talking about. No cool way to introduce that, right? But before I get into that depressing subject matter and the more depressing implications of it, I want to make an announcement that I've been invited to present at the FUNL 4 conference, Freedom Under Natural Law 4 conference, that is titled Inspiring Care to Action. So this is the first time I've announced it. I want to say thank you to the organizers. Thank you to Leslie Powers, to Chris Jansen, Will Keller, and many more people that are involved in this. So I'm very excited to present that. That'll be February 22nd, 23rd. You should go to the website freedomundernaturallaw.com, where you can actually see the replays of the past conferences, the first three. And then, of course, the information is there. You can connect with them. I'll link that. I'll be giving a presentation called The Sonic Divorce, Man's Estrangement from Nature's Music. That will be the title of my presentation. It's all about sound and music. Now, this episode that we're talking about today, it's actually all about image and visuals, which is interesting the way that sets up. And it's also interesting that the Freedom Under Natural Law 4 conference is titled Inspiring Care to Action, because this episode is the exact opposite of that sentiment. It's just about the most demoralizing, uninspiring thing you can find and imagine. It'll not be inspiring anybody, but I gotta talk about it. And I don't mean just this event with the woman set on fire in the New York City subway. It's all these acts of random acts of violence that we're going to talk about, acts of this nature. It's random acts of violence against innocent, unsuspecting people. Those are just about the worst things. It's very just depressing the way senselessly this happens for no reason at all, just because they were being there, just because they were human. People are victims of the worst kind of atrocities with no motive, seemingly, right? Now, the roots of that kind of violence, that kind of behavior, those are the same roots of why we're living in a tyrannical world. So this is how it connects. This is why it's on This Week in Tyranny, because this is actually key. It's just, how else do you talk about it? How else does it come up? When does it make sense to talk about the deepest, most depraved parts of the human psyche? It doesn't really come up in conversation. It's even easier to talk about vaccines than it is to talk about that, right? But it's absolutely so important. And when these things happen like that in the world more and more, and they are, that's how you know the world is unraveling. Okay, so this is why I'm going to talk about it, even though I don't like to. I don't like this episode. Woman got set on fire in the New York City subway. Investigators said that Sebastian Zapeta, 33 years old, used a lighter to set the unidentified woman's clothes on fire as she slept inside a train car at the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue station on December 22nd. And on December 23rd, I saw a video of this. There's a video. I actually saw it on Facebook. So it's easily accessible. And the video, I'll just summarize it like real quickly, because the video has to be where we start, the imagery of it. And I'm not going to play it, even though you probably could find it on YouTube and a lot of other places. Of course, on X, on Facebook, it'll be there. But I'm, of course, not going to play it here, because surely my video would get taken down if I did. And beside that, I don't even want to play it, because it is one of those videos that is that you can't unsee. So, very brief summary. It's about a 30-second video. This woman is fully on fire. While the train doors of the train are open, she's standing in the doorway to get out of the train, seemingly holding a railing, and sideways to the door. and there are a couple people watching from the outside. There's a cop that walks by in the middle of it, and you can see this is a late stage fire because at the point of the recording, because uh, the whole color of her is black, and I don't mean black like we call skin color black, like so-called black. I mean the color black, right? And you can see that her pant legs are burned down to above her ankles. So you could just see that how much has burned by then, right? And that's the content of the video, but really I want to talk not so much about the content of the video as I want to talk about the concept of video. And it's horrible that there's a video in the first place. You get that sense where you first see that, it's this kind of reaction like, why did I have to see that? Why is there a video of this? Instead of saving her, there are people recording her. Instead of helping, someone is holding a camera that's recording this woman burning alive. Now, I know we've seen that scenario before. We've heard that before. We get these things recorded of something going on, and you ask, wait a minute, why is this person holding a phone up to their face? This is time for intervention, for help. And many have pointed that out. Why they're recording. And I agree, of course, it's disturbing. But on the other hand, if it's not for that video, then I wouldn't be making this video, and then you wouldn't hear my thoughts about any of it because it wouldn't have come up in conversation, right? Because I saw the headline before I saw the video, and I wouldn't be talking about it if I hadn't seen that. Why? Why wouldn't I make a video without seeing it? Because without putting a face, a name to something, without having the actual image of that human being there, it would just be another headline. And there are way too many horrific headlines out there. They're out there, I know. Just as bad as this and worse than this. But we don't talk about it because it's not personal, okay? We don't care about the impersonal. That's just how it is. And this is why the image and the sound of another human is crucial to getting someone to care about something. Okay, so there's a little bit of a foreshadowing to inspiring care to action. It's the FUNL 4 conference. How important image and sound is to get someone to care about something. But then the concept of the camera, I've introduced it. It comes into play in another way here, and that is in the way of the surveillance state. Because they just praised having cameras all over New York City. I talked about that the last 2 episodes. Everybody's consciously or subconsciously happy about the cameras being there for catching the shooter of the CEO of the health insurance company, Brian Thompson. I shouldn't say everyone, because many people are not happy that those cameras were there, because there's a very much of a pro Luigi Mangione sentiment, which again I talked about, right? But for a majority of people, cameras are proving once again to be somewhat of a real, people are real thankful for them being there all over the place. The New York governor, Kathy Hochul, her office said in a statement that crime rates have decreased by 10% since the governor introduced a subway safety initiative in May, and by 42% since January 2021. But numerous high-profile violent incidents have continued to cause anxiety among residents regarding their safety on the subway system. I talked about that safety initiative when it happened. That was a few episodes ago. Okay, maybe it wasn't May, but a few months ago I talked about that. And we've got another high-profile incident there now. In light of safety concerns ahead of the holidays, Hochul announced plans to boost subway security, including deploying 250 additional National Guard members and equipping every subway car with security cameras. That's the one I talked about. And it's quoted now talking about this article. So one thing connects to another. And it's interesting and unfortunate how that happens. But it's absolutely not to say I told you so. But this now brings up political agendas. Which agendas are going to be advanced due to this event occurring. And one of them is surveillance, right? We just talked about it. But before I dive into that, let's talk about the motive of why anyone would do such a thing. Because that, again, that's the important thing here. Who even does this, right? Why? An action like this can only be motivated by self-hatred. Self-hatred and disgust for human life itself. That's what I see here, because this was a woman that was sleeping on the train. It's not said anywhere that it's been said, reported here and there, that she was homeless. Not, it hasn't been proven that she was homeless, but think about, like, see this in your head. This person, he's only 33. This is a younger guy. There are pictures, you could see the pictures of him. Clearly, there's a lot of anger. There's who knows what this guy is going on in his head. But he's looking at somebody on the train, and they're sleeping there. So she's not really doing anything. So there's no action that is inspiring that other than her just be existing there, being alive, right? Now, the reason she was the target is because she was defenseless and in a sleeping position. So this is the kind of thing, if you could do something to someone with no repercussions, what would you do, right? This is that kind of a scenario for a guy like this, because they're unsuspecting there, and it was at the end of the train line, so it's very likely it was only him and her there. Okay, so what comes out in a scenario like that is what your real feeling towards a human being is, what your real view of human life is, without all of the external factors that influence your behavior. Of course, there were repercussions for his behavior later, sure, but in that given moment, he could do anything without any third-party interference. So the only time you would do something like this to somebody who is defenseless is if you're really absolutely fed up with both yourself and humanity itself. Okay, that's what it is, yeah, it's a deep psychological breakdown, and I'm not saying I'm 100% on that, because at the end of the day, you don't know what's going on in somebody else's head. And also there's the alternative to what could have influenced his behavior, right? But we're just kind of talking at the surface level. This is how you could explain something like this. Not that that's even a logical explanation, because it's not logical. But most violence comes from a breakdown in the social or family bonds. This is what creates people like that, right? So regardless of what his motivation is, what made him like that is it had to be in a social breakdown and a family bond breakdown. Okay? And of course, this happens on the 22nd. This happens around Christmas time. Everybody knows what Christmas is. It's a time of family. Okay? It's about love and all of this stuff. And you feel that it's the same thing in Guatemala, where this guy's from. It's the same thing here, and in all different parts of the world, even if it's on a different, week or month of the calendar. So since it has to do with family, it has to do with home, it has to do with childhood. And in the childhood is usually where things break down when it comes to the events that make you a person like this. It all comes back to the childhood. And then you take a look at this through another lens. You see that homeless woman sleeping there. And again, it just kind of isolates things. And that woman is just, to him, it has to be a symbol of the mother. And that is really at the root. You look at all these serial killers and people who do all these things. It really comes down to their relationship that they had with their parents, specifically the mom. Because, most of these people are men. So obviously but even if it's a woman, it's the same thing. Like, the mom is the first relationship we have. So that is like your root. That is your root of what is your first concept or sense of what life is. And these are this is what determines your self-image going forward, right? Because you're seeing it in the reflection of the mother. All of these things have to do with the motive. I don't really mean to go on and on about it because it's not really the point. But I do touch on these psychological issues because understanding the self and understanding psychology and how things go back to parental abandonment and things like that, and the trauma as a child, and how resolved or unresolved that affects your self-image and affects the way you see yourself, and then that affects behavior. So when we look at what's wrong with the world, there are no overnight solutions, really. You gotta go back and make things right from when the person is a child. And not to go back into the past, but starting now, how you're working on yourself, and then how you're approaching parenthood. That's the long-term solution. Of course, it's not a simple one. But see, interpersonal relationships, this is where we're being attacked. We're not really attacked directly by government. Not as much as I talk about it. I talk about it, of course, because it's happening. I want to bring attention to it. But really where the attacks on freedom are happening are in the area of interpersonal dynamics, of relationships, of friendships, okay? Social bonds. And of course, those are influenced by global socialism and the postmodern world agenda. So I'm not really separating that from global tyranny. That is global tyranny. That is, go back to the Frankfurt School and the Fabian Society, and really, I'd point you to Mark Passio's presentation, The Unholy Feminine, and the series of shows he's done about that, right? That having to do with specifically the breakdown of romantic relationships, intimate relationships between men and women. This is where most of the war is being fought. And I'll talk more about that. So this area, and that of course has to do now with random acts of violence like this, okay? Both this and the last two episodes about the shooting of Brian Thompson by Luigi Mangione. So 3 episodes in a row now, and if you go back, it's more of this theme is surfacing. It's really not so much about what laws passed and what kind of, who's getting thrown in jail, or what taxes are getting raised, or what traffic ticket initiatives are being implemented. It's these killings, these acts of violence, all of these things that are promoting chaos between the people. And now whether this guy Sebastian Zapeta is a patsy, whether Luigi Mangione was a patsy, for example, the way David Berkowitz was a patsy, and he said that he was a member of a satanic group. David Berkowitz was the son of Sam killings. He killed 6 people in 1976-77 in New York City, by the way. And he said he was part of a satanic group, and he had accomplices, and there were multiple shooters. And that was widely reported in the media. It was high profile. They read his letters to the police while he was on the run, and at that time that was the largest manhunt in New York City history. That repeated itself with Luigi here, and the way there was the whole manhunt reporting. I did a show about that. And then the other high profile serial killer, of course, Charles Manson. What Charles Manson was doing, he said his goal was political. He said he intended to result in maximum chaos and start a race war. Again, this is, they tell you this. And for more about that, you should read this book. You should get this book, Programmed to Kill, The Politics of Serial Murder by David McGowan. And if you read Dave McGowan, if you go through this material, I'm not saying that this guy that set the woman on fire is an example of this. I'm not even saying that. But if you read this book, I guarantee you, it's very likely that you take in this information after doing that, you go, oh my God, this is what all of these shootings and mass shootings, and this is not so much about mass shooters, but you extrapolate that and apply that to them, and look at the connections between them and the military, and the kind of medication they have, the upbringing they have, and it ties into all of this stuff. And really, you don't even need to get the book. You can just, there's a YouTube series, like 300 videos. Someone put together the contents of this book and other sources, and then video and images. Really good series that I'll have to link, okay, since I mentioned it. But whether or not that is the case here, and if it's a cult coordinated event or not, or if it's merely the environmental conditions that are breeding these random acts of violence, that's really beside the point. The point is your outcome. Who benefits? Follow the money, all of those cliches that we talk about. Follow the money. That's what this is here. So what are those results? What are those political agendas, those outcomes that are now going to be pushed as a result of something like this? Okay. One we already talked about, it's cameras. But not just cameras, police presence on the subway, pat downs to get into the subway, all of this stuff. It's going to start out with public transportation, but of course, more control, more police, now National Guard. It starts out with public transportation because that's the only way they can justify it, but soon it'll go into the private sector, okay? That this is the point. We're still in the early stages of that, right? To get people to totally accept being pat down and searched. We accept it at airports and in the subway system for now, but of course it'll progress, right? What else? Ramping up anti-immigrant sentiment, because Sebastian Zapeta was a migrant that came here from Guatemala in 2018, and then he was actually deported and then came back into the country again. And that's no accident, because now with Trump as president, we're seeing a resurgence of support for police, right? We're seeing a lot of, back the blue, protect our police. And it's just the Hegelian dialectic working wonderfully, because now you got plenty of people that somehow get that the deep state is operating, but somehow think that the deep state and the World Economic Forum and BlackRock, that they're not in control of police departments and of border control. Cognitive dissonance, but this stuff works. What can you expect from people that are not well researched and do a lot of their research on social media, right? Like, let's not, there's a lot of shit talking about the younger generation, but I see these guys, they get their research on social media. All I ever get is social media links from people, but beside the point. What else is going to get pushed as a result of this is the support for socialized health care, especially for the homeless and all this, because for the homeless, for the addicted, for the mentally ill. Again, I'm not saying this woman was homeless 100% because that's not confirmed, but she was sleeping on the train. Now, why am I even mentioning that as it's a bad thing? Well, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to provide healthcare to people, but let's talk about what they're really trying to do. They're trying to introduce the European social system here, which means extremely high taxation and doing away with all the incentives to have successful small businesses and a lot of an independent avenue to success. There is no more independent affluence. That is the European way, okay? And Europe's waiting list for that healthcare, that they're supposed to have such great healthcare, right? That's what we hear about. It's years, and you can talk to people over there in Europe and in Canada that, yeah, you have this health insurance and everything. You have free healthcare, but to actually get it, to actually go see a doctor, it'll take so long. And then there are other problems that I'm not even going to get into, but there's plenty of research about that. There are plenty of stories of people, how it really is to get healthcare in a system where it's supposed to be provided for you. Now, the downside, of course, is primarily not only the time that you have to wait to get good healthcare, but also there's when you don't have the profit incentive, what else is assuring high quality, right? who's paying the doctors? Of course, the government will pay them for a while, but they're going to pay them less and less, because that's the nature of government, is to take more away and give less. Now, private healthcare, on the other hand, of course, we know about the corruption with it. We know that it has extremely high prices. Yes, but there is at least choice. And at least if you have money, you can actually get some good healthcare. And at least you're giving somebody a choice. It's a bad situation either way. Healthcare is bad either way. But of course, they want that European system, right? They want one noose for one neck, as Michael Tessarion says. But the truth is, over there, where they have big social universal healthcare, things are just as bad in those places. Europe and Canada, you could ask them. And it's just a reflection of how bad things actually are in the world, especially how bad things are within ourselves. And when we talk about an action like this, again, burning a woman alive, it can only be motivated by self-hatred and disgust for human life itself. And yes, that's a breakdown in the individual, but also relationships between individuals. And I mentioned social bonds and family. So, but having to do with housing now, I want to pull on that string because it's a major one. The housing crisis gets brought up here because you've got a migrant and you've got a homeless woman involved. So you've got both. You've got both demographics. And now, having to do with immigrants, migrants, and the homeless, anarchists like me, we're often asked, how would you deal with this issue? Right? The issue of the homeless, of people who don't have a house. And my answer is, I deal with it naturally. And naturally, the homeless would be pushed into shanty towns and be forced to live amongst each other, kind of like Skid Row and the favelas in Brazil and those types of things. Now, I know that sounds horrible. That sentence it even shocks me, okay? I know, but when problems get really big and out of control, there are no longer good solutions. Like, all the solutions are going to be painful. Once a state of illness gets bad enough, your options for getting better are both going to be really bad. And I'm just being honest about where we're at with the homeless population and people living in poverty and all the injustice here. We're in a situation that's really bad. But I'm proposing to deal with it naturally. So, like, people ask me, how would you solve the Sharia law type Muslim immigration in the different, especially in Europe, right? In Germany, in England, in France. And my solution is, let those people live together. If they're already in the country, you gotta let them. The best thing to do is to let them live amongst each other, and if they're gonna get together and make a little version of their country, that's what they should do, and you should let them. Okay, don't give them any. You don't have to give them any social programs, but let people live there. They're already here. They made it to your country. Don't. Like, what are you gonna do? Kill them? You're gonna drive them out at the point of a gun? No, that's again. This is the natural law way to deal with it. If you disagree, like, this is the time to jump in the comments. I'm ready for a contentious comment section. It's okay. I actually appreciate everybody who's been commenting. I'm gonna try to get back to engaging in the comments more. So my answer to the Muslim immigration thing, I'm not talking about just anybody who's a Muslim. I'm talking about the people that want to change the country's laws to be like their country's laws, right? So then, of course, when I say that, then they say, well, how can you do that? Like, what about them harassing the women? There are videos of harassing women, telling them to put on a hijab. Those reports, like the rape that happens, it is real. So then what would I do about that? And my answer is very simple. Let the women carry guns. Let the women carry a pistol, a little pistol in their purse. You totally take the legal restrictions off of that. Sexual assault goes to zero overnight. Like, that's really what would happen. And I've never had a good argument made. That's where the conversation ends at that point, because that is truly the way to go. You let these women have guns, and then there is no problem. Then they have to act right. You want to be a hard-nosed motherfucker? You want to come into somebody else's country and tell them how to live? You better stay within your boundaries and yell that shit from afar, or you're gonna get smoked. You know, who can disagree with that? Diversity actually is the natural order, right? So a lot of this has been, it's been again it's been kind of blurred a little bit, because I'm really in a minority of people that I speak with who actually says open the borders, because I don't mean open the borders and then flood them with people that and do away with all the good things about American and Western culture. I'm just saying you don't need to be guarding at the gates. You don't need to guard the gates. You need to manage what's inside here and then let things occur naturally. But you have to let them occur naturally all the way. You have to let people defend themselves as well. And you have to stop giving incentives for people to latch onto the system and consume without producing. Again, I know how it sounds, but that's the answer. Now, diversity is the natural order, and that's the way we've had it in America for a long, long, long time. Now, yes, there has always been racism, racial violence. All this stuff has been around, I know. But per capita, it is so minuscule in America. It is. And in America is an extremely peaceful place, usually until government gets involved. Usually. That's how it goes. But in the natural way, the way diversity works is diversity still organizes, like settles with like. That's how it goes with settlements. Okay, if you open the borders up, what you're gonna get is you're gonna get the nations and the cultures getting together with one another. The Polish neighborhoods, the Mexican neighborhoods, the Chinese neighborhoods, and that's a very good thing. And you can also have the crazy Muslim neighborhoods over there, if those people are there. And it's just, at least, even if there's a no-go area, like a lot of people, don't go into the ghetto on the south side. You don't go there unless you have to, because you realize that it's just a more dangerous place. I don't think anybody's arguing with that. But here's the thing, nobody's forcing you to be there. Nobody's forcing these people to assimilate. And I don't think you should force somebody to assimilate. They have to assimilate if they want to be part of your daily life. And the problem is, we've got a mix. We've got a forcing by government of people to assimilate. And then on one hand, you've got, you've just got double standards, right? You've got selective enforcement of laws. Well, there's nothing wrong with kind of a Wild West scenario, as long as you let these women have the handgun in their purse, and you guys will see, it's gonna get pretty peaceful pretty quick. But anyway, back to the neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods are a really good idea, I think, because not everybody's going to learn the language and become American and learn the Constitution, and nor should they. But that still works, and you can live in any given area, even if you're not from that race or culture, but you just have to live by the customs of that culture, and then you have the freedom to either do that or to not live with them. It's perfect. And I'm from Chicago, which is a pretty segregated city. It's not as segregated as it used to be, but there are definite areas of town where predominantly one nation of people live together, or two similar groups living together. You've got your Polish neighborhood, you've got your Hispanic neighborhoods, you got the Arab neighborhood. It's remarkable how you're driving down Devon and you just see it. Oh, it's starting. You're gonna start to see a certain language, then you start to see another language on the storefronts. The crazy thing about these areas and these people, they're all tolerant and open to you living among them. You could go and move out there right now. You're not going to get ran out of town with pitchforks. Everybody's tolerant. All of them except for the Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. It's which is funny. I mean, call that what you want to call that. I'm not making any judgments. I'm just making observations. That's what it is. Um, but anyway, this is what should happen. Okay, what should happen is the ability for these people that are coming from another country, or Venezuela or whatever, uh, not to kind of be hanging on by a thread thanks to these shelters that are constantly seeming to, they're moving, they're trying to conceal themselves within areas. They're in colleges, they're in these different areas. It's not really not a sustainable way to live. It should be made easier to settle down in beat down areas. Something like trailer parks. They're going to be on the outskirts of the city, where you have access to plywood and waste building materials, where you can build a decent shelter out of that stuff, and you can have your tents there too. And then you can have a low income economy there, where not as much of the public resources are going there, but you can survive there. I mean, they're already surviving in bad conditions, but let them come together, and at least it's for both. It's for both them and the people that are just living normally, right? Don't force people together who are living different lifestyles, and then they can have their own version of an economy there. And I know the reality of that. I know it's atrocious. Like, I'm talking about something that is like this kind of a thing would be pretty dark, and yes, exploitative practices would be employed there, right? When we're talking about shanty towns, places like Skid Row and Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia. I know that's terrible. But if you made prostitution legal in those areas, just don't enforce your laws there, right? You don't even have to change any laws. Just don't enforce the laws there. You would be surprised how much revenue those communities would start bringing in. And I'm sorry, look, I'm a romantic, so you're not gonna see me frequenting those areas and contributing to their GDP, right? With the prostitution. But I'm just being honest about human beings and how we can do things according to our current mindset. We can still do things in a way where there's both freedom and dignity. Because right now we don't have either. We don't have either freedom or dignity in the way we do things now. We've got people begging on the corner. The people look down on them. Sometimes somebody will throw them a bone, but again, it's not a sustainable way to live. So you're just keeping somebody alive. You're keeping a whole group of people alive, and you're just breeding more and more friction, and you're getting further and further from real solutions. And you're getting further and further from clearly defining where someone is at. And these people are getting false hope. And then you got a guy like this now that lost it on the subway. I don't know what his life is like, but keep that in mind for as another layer of what could be influencing such a thing. So that would be a time. I'm serious about the shantytown suggestion, and we're gonna talk about why we don't have that, because it's actually on purpose. Because instead of that, what I proposed, we have the consensus pressure, meaning not necessarily a government edict, but the pressure of the people. The consensus pressure, what people are demanding, is to help them but not really help them. Like, people insist on keeping them among the well-adjusted population for some reason, right? Everybody living together, and this, the discomfort of this. The more we're gonna have these kind of crimes happening, the more we're gonna have homeless people on the subway, and the more, there are gonna be more acts of violence. But the truth is, a lot of these people, these homeless people in Chicago, they are downright violent. Like, I don't even want to tell this story, but I was working near a high rise, and then I was just speaking with somebody on the sidewalk, and this guy is driving around with his cart, homeless guy, black gentleman. Not that it matters, but keep in mind, like, this is there's a whole group of people that's being, again, they're being, they're not really being helped. They're being fed false hope in the way we do these things. So this person is somewhere in that area, in a very, affluent Gold Coast kind of area, with where there's a high rise and all this expensive stuff. They're charging the hell out of me for parking there, and then he just launches his whole cart with his things right where me and another guy are talking, and then the cart just crashes into the street, and he walks right in between us, and I'm staring him down like this, and then he starts saying things like he's gonna fight me, and really it was the time, like, it was about the time to fight, and I couldn't really do it because I was you know I was working, so I was I'm over here being a project manager. I can't be fighting people downstairs, because of course I would be the one that has much more to lose. But that is a situation that I've never really been in before, because I'm always the one, I'd love to fight. But there it was actually like a little bit alarming and sad that this little guy is like so ready for that, and this is such a crazy action to take, because you never know who you did that to, and I don't know what that guy would have done. But it's just like, again, you talk about mental illness, you talk about living on the edge. This is what a lot of homeless people are like, and a lot of people are going through these areas on the subway, and can you blame them for not feeling safe when you actually have a person who's like yelling in the air, talking to themselves, making like sudden jerking movements, Like, I'm not going to pretend, like, you have the right to do whatever, right? As long as you're not in my space. But if you're right next to me doing that, like, I got to be ready for violence, because violence happens in those scenarios. So I'm just being honest about what the reality is. But instead, we're supposed to pretend like everything is okay. And the more and more of that there is, the more there's a discomfort, the more there's an anxiety for the general public. And now the general public, as polarized as they may be, both conservative and liberal, they're getting pushed to accept that European socialist lifestyle. And not having these designated areas, not having these shanty towns, is what gets it done. Now, why aren't shanty towns seen in the U.S. as much as they are seen in Europe, right? As much as they're seen, or not even, it's U.S. and Europe, not as much compared to Brazil and Asia and these kind of places. Now, why? Zoning and land use regulations. U.S. cities have strict zoning laws that regulate land use, often making it difficult to establish informal settlements. These regulations typically require proper permits and adherence to building codes. That's the main one right here, right? All the inspections, all the permits, they just don't allow it. Okay? They're going to allow you to put a tent by Lakeshore Drive, but for them to actually settle down in a trailer park, skid row type of area, they're actually discouraging that from happening, because that would actually be looked at like, oh, who's going to get taxed for this? But for some reason, you can do it in the middle of the city. And that's part of that globalist agenda, of course. Number 2, housing policies. Various federal, state, and local housing policies aim to provide affordable housing options. Programs like public housing Section 8 vouchers and low-income housing tax credits help mitigate the need for informal settlements. So again, this is why those programs are there. All the Section 8 stuff, all the low-income housing. It's to ensure that the homeless problem will always be a problem, that it's always going to be a people's problem. See, they don't want it out of the public view. They want it absolutely in the public view, because then the people are going to go through the mayor. They're going to come to the mayor and the governor, and they're going to say, hey, you got to do something about these people. And the government's going to say, all right, we're going to try to do better. More initiatives, more programs, more money being taken out of the taxpayers' pockets. Okay? It's not really to solve the issue. It's to always keep it publicly prominent. because these programs are the homeless people, the crime, the street crime, and the homeless, the poverty. That's the politicians' claim to fame to get you to write their paychecks. Next, we have economic factors. The U.S. has a relatively high standard of living compared to many countries where shanty towns are common. Where poverty exists, the economic structure allows for different forms of housing and assistance. Again, I talked about this. There is assistance, but not enough to solve the issue. It's just enough to offer hope. But like, what is that sentence really saying? There's a higher standard of living. It's just saying that Americans actually give enough of their money to the homeless for them to not be forced into the shantytown scenario. And I know the shantytown scenario is hellish, but that is the reality of how you're living, right? Everybody else has to take care of themselves. You know, and not everybody can take care of themselves, but this is why family is so important. Again, family, a shared culture. If you're living with the people that you want to be around, you actually want to be around them, nobody's forcing you, then we do take care of people who are not able. You know, I could be disabled tomorrow. Who's going to take care of me? Not the government. It can only be the people that care about me. That's life. Next, we have urban planning. Many U.S. cities have undergone urban renewal and redevelopment efforts that have aimed to eliminate blight and improve living conditions, which can reduce the prevalence of shanty towns. So there's been a lot of that urban planning. There's been a lot of reorganization, moving low-income people next to high-income communities. And this is a double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, it does help people to... You're putting them in a better environment, it makes it possible for them to live a better lifestyle, of course. But on the other hand, it puts people into an environment that they're not used to, where they cannot sustain the kind of lifestyle that keeps an apartment, that keeps the rent paid, that keeps the light on, and a way of life that has a daily routine. Okay? I'm not saying having a 9 to 5 and having a daily routine is the only way to live. Far from it. But in the communities that these people are in, that is the way to live. So if you can't live that way, then what good is it for you to have some kind of a housing program that puts you there if the way you're living is not really, it doesn't really fit the area that you're in. And 5, social services and support systems. There are various social services and nonprofit organizations in the U.S. that provide support to homeless individuals and families, helping them to access resources such as shelters and affordable housing. And this is true. There are those programs, and I think the charities and the food drives and the soup kitchens, I think they're wonderful. I can't say one bad word about that. Okay, so I'm not against this kind of help. But see, it's not the point. I'd share my meal too, personally. I'll share happily. But it's like my mind and my dignity coming from who I am, the dignity of me being a living human being, requires that I pursue a real solution for people. I can't accept a stopgap solution and then lifelong dependence. Okay? So it's not that I don't want to share. It's that I can't stand bullshit. I can't tolerate bullshit and fakeness. And this is the way we're dealing with the problem now. It's bullshit, it's a fake solution. And it's not really helping these homeless people. And it's not really helping the migrants. It's not helping anybody. And socialism is not the answer, because that's not going to help anybody either. Okay? Like the prison system is another huge conversation. I won't even touch on that too much. But I don't agree with the way we do the prison thing either. So, we got cameras, we got police presence, we've got pressure for more social programs, we've got the anti-immigrant sentiment for the purpose of more support for government. Those are all the reasons. Then we talked about housing, which is a part of that. And lastly, what comes out of this event is fear and anxiety. And fear and anxiety is really the main point here of why something like this would occur, especially in New York. For some reason, it's a key item on the agenda to just scare the shit out of New York City. It's like there's been just a total bullseye target on New York City. The Son of Sam shootings I mentioned in the 70s, World Trade Center 1990, World Trade Center 2001, the pandemic shuts down the city, right? Now, I know all cities got shut down, but especially New York because it's the biggest one. So then you had all the high profile crimes on the subway even before this. Now you had Brian Thompson getting shot. And now again, you got a woman burned alive on the subway. And then the video is put out there. Somehow it gets through on Facebook and Twitter, right? Somehow. So they're not complicit in this. How does that video up and being shared? Or you can post anything and it, no way. It gets taken down right away. All of that artificial intelligence and algorithms they have. But this gets broadcast to everybody and everybody sees it. Why? Why New York City? Because it's the biggest city in America, and really it's because it represents money. It represents money and the freedom and the opportunity to make money. Am I saying that money's beautiful? I'm far from rich, guys. But the reality is, if you have money, you can have freedom still in this world. You can have that kind of power and freedom to take action if you have money. So at least, as fucked up as the system is, you got a chance here. And we're being tricked into totally turning on this source of wealth, where this wealth, this kind of American wealth, has really fueled a lot of the advancements in all areas of life, including knowledge, including the ability to have healthy relationships. But this is the thing. Money is a big part of this, because if people are afraid and worried about getting killed in the street, then they're not going to pursue the American ideals of equal opportunity. See, it's not just money, but equal opportunity and rags to riches, that kind of American dream sort of thing. And that's because the free market requires trust. It requires having faith that people can interact with each other without some kind of overlord authority watching over their every move. Right? That you can make a transaction with somebody, nobody else is watching. You trust the person enough to make a transaction, and you know that they'll pay you. You're not worried about them robbing you. That's the thing. And violence makes free exchange of resources impossible. So you can't have freedom and violence existing at the same time. Again, this is the law of freedom. As morality increases, freedom increases. Okay? This is why communism is always achieved by violent means. Because if you introduce violence, then people no longer trust transactions to occur unless the big bully is giving their blessing, right? There's always violence involved, but you just don't want it to be violence done to you directly, and that's the whole way that a socialist economy works. It's just that the violence is selective. And still we have, and this is what we have today, we have a hybrid socialism. We still have things being achieved by global means every day, but slowly. And this is another instance, seemingly disconnected acts of violence. This is another one of them. And no state or federal authority really wants it to stop. They don't want it to stop. Because if violence were to stop, then they're out of business. Because they're built on fear, first. And second, they can't have a free market because they are that third party in all transactions. They are the bully. They are the one who's getting the taxes. They're the overlord. And if they get cut out of that equation, then they're out of a job, right? It's as simple as that. But let's not point fingers and take it back to the individual, because at the end of the day, it's on us. It's on the people that find themselves in these acts of violence, both the attacker and the victim. That's who's going to bring in the totalitarian tomorrow. And not only them, but also the onlooker. The people that are standing by doing nothing. It's another reason why this video is so shocking if you do decide to find it, because you see all three people in the video. You see the woman burning, and you see the person that set her on fire. He's standing there with his shirt and he's fanning the flames, and you could see it like for several seconds he's doing that. And then there's a cop seeing the whole thing, and literally in the video he waves his hand because he told that guy to get away, right, from the woman, and he kind of waves his hand and goes away and goes somewhere else while he's fanning the flames. And then there's another person in the frame, and then of course there's another person recording, and then more voices are heard in the background. So you've got multiple onlookers, you've got a police officer, you've got the guy that set her on fire, and you have the woman on fire. Now, there are three roles to this that I want to talk about, and it's the unholy trinity of violence. And they're all involved: abuser, victim, and onlooker. And to me, all three are at fault. That's a super controversial viewpoint, but obviously I'm not blaming children that find themselves in violence. I'm not blaming people who were walking down the street and something happening to them. I'm certainly not blaming a woman that was on the train and she was sleeping there. Is not what I'm saying. But take this model into consideration, because it comes with violence usually is not random. It usually comes with warning signs. So this should really be considered, that all three parties are contributing to violence by being involved in violence. It's not just the wrongdoer and not just the abuser. Okay? Of course, it's debatable by how much. But on a systemic level, if you look at everything that's going on, okay, you look at a war that's going on anywhere in the world. You've got the people that are actually in the war, you got the people on the other side, and then you got the people equipping them, aiding them, and so on and so forth. So on a systemic level, I would put the percent responsibility this way: 5% victim, 60% attacker, and 35% onlooker. And I'll take it home. Like, when I look back at my own family's history, being in Nazi-occupied Poland, where you got concentration camps, being in that situation where so you take that example, you look at the Nazi SS officers and the foot soldiers, and of course they get the bulk of the responsibility. They get the overwhelming majority of the responsibility. They're going to get what's coming to them. Obviously, they're far and away the main problem and the overwhelming majority. Okay? 60%. Then I look at my own people, that my family included, who were just living there in that country at that time. And I look back at anyone, and you have to ask, how did you let it get this far? Because how is everyone not throwing Molotov cocktails every day, like men, women, and children? Because there are certain scenarios that are just not fit for humans to live. And again, I hate to be in this situation where I have to say this, because I really hate, I don't mean to be the tough guy who says what I would do if I was in that situation. But here's the thing: I eagerly await these situations to prove what I would do, because I love freedom and human life, and if there needs to come a time where you take the worst, you take the worst, if you have to be burned alive, I'm ready for that. This is what I'm here to do. Because I mean it. These principles are worth it. It's worth it to, for people to get together and have a child and raise their child together and live freely with nobody. You can't live in a way where you don't know if somebody's gonna hit you on the head with the butt of a gun. It's just not a way to live. And if you have to sacrifice everyone for it, then that's what you have to do. It's the only way to live. So again, that's really tough because obviously you're in that scenario. Like I know it's easy to say that, but then what if you're gonna be the one to go out there, and then if you're gone, what is your family going to do, right? You're gonna leave your wife and your child alone. They're even gonna be worse off without you. So I understand, but trust me, that 5%, I'm not taking it back. Like I can't even say this freely because this gets your video taken down. If you talk about the accountability of the V word, like it's to that level, and I'm not talking about vaccines. I'm talking about the other word, you know, the innocents and the role of the innocents. And then I look at the innocent Germans in that scenario, right? So the people who are the onlookers, the people who had their government taken over, technically they didn't do anything. But, I say, you vote for this, you reap the benefits of this. It doesn't happen without your support. So if you're in the picture, you're not too far from the actual killers to me. Okay? To me, it's somewhere like 60 to 35. And I'm really leaning more so towards like 50 to 45. Because evil people, once that happens in their mind to make them evil, then they're kind of like animals. They just are who they are. You don't have to wonder what a fly is going to do if you have, some nice cake on the table. You know what the fly is going to do. It's going to act according to its nature. So, of course, they get the responsibility, but those people they already are what they are. Now, the people that are standing back and watching it happen, they're not evil people, right? They have the choice. They still have the choice. They realize that violence is happening in front of them. But you're just standing there watching it happen. You have the choice to step in. You're not evil, but you do nothing against it. That's almost more evil, right? And it's not to dwell on that, but a video like this really shows it. And I'm not saying that at that point it's that easy to, like, what are you going to do at this point? The burns were they were too far gone, but still, you could even kick a woman like that over, at least so she's not standing there, right? At least limit the oxygen. You take a coat off, you take your jacket off, you throw it on the fire, things like that. I'm not saying you can, so again, it's not to tell people what to do, but it's just that the video is showing symbolically what happens all the time. Because this happens all the time with people looking at what is happening and saying, oh, what can I do about it? I hear that all the time, and that shit is crazy to me. Because you can see what you can do about it. You can see what I've done so far, and I've only been making damn videos. I haven't been doing much. I wish I was doing more. But videos like this, I've seen these kinds of videos before. Like really gruesome graphic type of stuff. But what this one really disturbed me. Like, we're getting towards the end of this video, so I'm just gonna, maybe not, but it really fucked with me. This video, it affected me because what disturbed me about it is the lack of fight at this point that you could see with the woman. Like, she's making an effort only to stand there and keep burning. Right? There's no running around or screaming, nothing like that. But so even though her fate is sealed at this point, she's still breathing there, right? So there's still somebody there, but only just holding on and basically burning away. And I thought, again, I'm making the metaphor, making the connection. I think this is this is definitely what it's like to be an addict. I think this is what it's like to be homeless. And the lifestyles of many people are like this. Like, they may even have a house with a family, with a house and a Christmas tree. But say if they're gamblers, or they're on opiates, or they're addicted to eating food that's making them sick, but they continue to eat it, or if they're being abusive to their loved ones, like, they might as well be on fire, burning away. There are plenty of people like that look normal, but if you could see somehow their energetic expression, what's going on inside, It would be exactly this, standing there, holding onto this railing, burning alive, with someone fanning the flames in front of everybody, and then everybody else is watching. So, again, all three of the people involved, this is exactly what it's like. Um, self I'm gonna link if you go to freedomundernaturallaw.com, there's a link to the Telegram chat. And I don't know if this was in that chat or if another chat, but someone asked me about self-cannibalism. It's a term I used, that there was a carnism versus veganism debate about, dietary choice. And I said, forget dietary choice. The real satanic diet that we have is self-cannibalism. We've got people eating themselves. And I don't mean literally, but this concept is that you're spending your time on things, you're taking into yourself things that make you worse, things that really, you're consuming yourself, right? You think you're taking something in, but you're really destroying yourself. And it's the same concept of self-immolation. It's like setting yourself on fire. It's just something I thought of when watching this. This is what we do as a people, as a society. We have the kind of habits that make us worse. Like we're scrolling through TikTok. This is making us worse. This is what we want. Like we do it, but it's consuming us the more we do it. It's like setting yourself on fire. And we've got the ones fanning the flames. Then they're right there. The ruling classes, the satanic occult, the psychopaths in power. This is who they are. They are like these people just fanning the flames, and they're just sitting there. And then everybody else, we have the watchers. Got plenty of those people that are just watching it happen. Don't care enough to really jump in the game. I have some personal connections to this video that I'm just gonna mention because I don't know, you may find it interesting. I find it interesting. This guy, they said when they arrested him, he had like paint covered pants. Like, he must have done some painting. And he's from Guatemala. Now it's crazy because I work with painters from Guatemala, which is, I don't think it's even that common. I've worked with a lot of Mexican guys. I've worked with guys from Honduras, but Guatemala and this guy, and their last name starts with an A, and this one is Zapeta. It's got the last name that starts with a Z. So again, the same profession, same nation, and A to Z. I found that crazy because I did episode 100 not that long ago, and I actually called it, like, the whole concept of that was an A to Z of tyranny, of like everything that's going on in the world. I see little things like that. There are plenty of them. I don't talk about them all because I don't mean to suggest that the world is like molding around me, that I'm like shaping these things. I don't want to make it seem like that, but I see these things and I think, damn, it's crazy what's going on. And then it's crazy that it's the New York subway again. And it's the video, I did the video about the police presence and the cameras after there were some high profile violent attacks. I talked about this thing, then I did videos about the migrant crisis, about the housing for the homeless and how BlackRock was involved in that. Like, these are episodes I did not that long ago. And then you had the CEO shot in New York City, and you have this again in New York City on the subway. And that, it blows my mind, honestly. So there's like a personal connection to these things that I talk about. And that's why I mention it, because it is about personal connection. Like I said earlier, this is why the image and the sound of another human being, it's totally key to getting someone to care about something. Otherwise, people just don't care. So maybe it's good that these shows have gotten more personal. And have you actually noticed that all of these episodes, they're no longer about like tyrannical laws, right? I don't talk so much about government or even voting, or even an innocent person being detained by government, or the guns that are being confiscated and all that. They're more so about acts of violence these days, and this is where the war is being waged on the people today. I've mentioned that, and it really has been that for the past 15 years. Yeah, like, yeah, there's been tyranny, of course, but it pales in comparison to the way that relationships, family, and social dynamics have broken down. And I'm going to talk more about that in my presentation in February. Um, but, it's important to mention. I think this is going to, it's already been more of a focus on what I talk about, because like, it's not really about politics. It's not really about what system of government we have right now, because it's just about how we see ourselves and how we see people around us, what kind of bonds and relationships we have with them. And then whatever is uh, the ostensible form of government that we have, it's really not about what system it is. It's about what the spirit is of the people that are living under that system. So, that's, we can't put the cart in front of the horse, and we have to remember the order of things. The order of things is, we have to start loving ourselves. We have to develop loving connections with people close to us. We have to think community, right? Uh, do we trust our neighbors? What kind of environment are we living in? And then looking at the world at large and going outside of that. Understanding natural law is crucial. Absolutely, I'm all about that. But there's no chance for any action unless we can find a way to really love and care about people. To really have love and care, we have to get our image and our sound, our image, our voice through them in a very personal way. So, more listening and more speaking amongst each other, and then we move out. That's my message for today. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.